The old Stonebrook Hotel loomed before me, its Victorian architecture a shadow of its former glory. Broken windows, peeling paint, and overgrown gardens. My entire inheritance from my eccentric Uncle Marcus. While my cousins received his stocks, properties in prime locations, and substantial cash holdings, I got what they called the worthless dump. Olivia, darling, you can't seriously be considering keeping this disaster. My Aunt Margaret's voice dripped with false concern as she picked her way through the debris-strewn lobby. The once grand chandelier hung precariously, its crystals dulled by decades of dust. I ran my hand along the antique reception desk, feeling the solid mahogany beneath years of neglect. Actually, I'm not just keeping it, I'm renovating it. The laugh that burst from my cousin William echoed through the empty space. With what money? Uncle Marcus left you a liability, not an asset. The property taxes alone will bankrupt you. He wasn't entirely wrong. At 28, my savings as a historical preservation specialist weren't exactly robust. But there was something about this place, something in the way Uncle Marcus had specifically chosen this property for me in his will. Remember what he used to say? William continued, examining his manicured nails. Olivia sees the value others miss. Well, there's nothing of value here, cousin. Sell it to me for a fair price, and I'll tear it down for a parking structure. I thought back to my last conversation with Uncle Marcus, just weeks before his passing. We'd been looking through his collection of vintage photographs, many featuring the Stonebrook in its heyday. Pay attention to the details, Olivia, he'd said, his eyes twinkling with that familiar mischief. Sometimes the greatest treasures hide in plain sight. The property is mine, I said firmly, and I'm keeping it. My announcement at the family dinner that evening went about as well as expected. The grand dining room of my parents' house felt suffocating as familiar faces twisted with mockery and disbelief. She's lost her mind, my sister Diana declared, swirling her wine glass. First that useless degree in historical preservation, and now this. My father cleared his throat. Olivia, be reasonable. William's offer is generous considering the state of that place. You could invest the money in something sensible. The hotel was Uncle Marcus's passion project before he got sick, I argued. He spent years collecting historical documents about it. There has to be a reason. Oh, spare us the sentimental nonsense, Aunt Margaret cut in. Marcus was getting senile at the end. Why else would he saddle you with that money pit while giving the rest of us valuable assets? I pushed back my chair, unable to take another minute of their condescension. Maybe because he knew I was the only one who would appreciate it. The next morning, armed with cleaning supplies and determination, I entered my hotel. Sunlight streamed through broken windows, illuminating swirling dust motes and faded wallpaper. The grand staircase, though worn, still showcased intricate woodwork that would cost a fortune to replicate today. I started in what had once been the hotel's library. Boxes of Uncle Marcus's research materials sat untouched since his death. As I sorted through old photographs, blueprints, and newspaper clippings, a pattern began to emerge. The Stonebrook hadn't just been any hotel. In the 1920s, it had been a sanctuary for artists, writers, and musicians. Some of the greatest works of the era had been created within these walls. But more intriguingly, some of the wealthiest families of the time had also been regular guests. A yellowed newspaper article caught my eye. Mysterious disappearance 8 OK. Valuable art collection vanishes without trace. The story, dated 1928, detailed how a prominent collector's entire portfolio had disappeared during his stay, never to be recovered. I was so engrossed in the articles that I almost missed the strange detail in one of the old photographs. It showed the hotel's original basement layout, but something wasn't right. The dimensions didn't match the current basement configuration. Armed with a flashlight and my phone's mapping app, I made my way down the creaking service stairs to the basement. The space was smaller than it should have been, significantly smaller. According to the original blueprints, there should have been an entire section that was now just wall. My heart pounding, I ran my hands along the rough stone surface. Uncle Marcus's voice echoed in my mind. Pay attention to the details. That's when I noticed it. A slight irregularity in the mortar pattern, and beside it, what looked like an ordinary electrical box. Except this hotel hadn't had electricity when it was built. With trembling fingers, I pulled open the rusted box. Inside wasn't electrical wiring, but a keypad. Ancient by today's standards. but definitely not from the hotel's original era. Uncle Marcus's research materials included maintenance records from every decade. Flipping through the 1980s logbook, I found a sequence of numbers appearing repeatedly, circled in his distinctive red pen. Standing in the dim basement, I took a deep breath and punched in the numbers. The grinding sound of machinery nearly made me jump out of my skin. Decades-old mechanisms groaned to life as a section of the wall began to move, revealing a dark passage beyond. Uncle Marcus hadn't just left me a broken-down hotel. He'd left me its secrets. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing a room that time had forgotten. The air was stale, undisturbed for what must have been decades. As the beam swept across the space, I gasped. Paintings, dozens of them, stacked carefully against the walls, protected by dusty cloth covers, bronze sculptures, antique vases, display cases filled with jewelry that sparkled even beneath years of dust. With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone and began photographing everything. One painting in particular caught my eye. The signature in the corner made my heart stop. Could it really be? I carefully lifted the protective covering, revealing the full canvas. The authentication certificate was still attached to the back, dated 1926. This single painting, if genuine, would be worth millions. Now I understood why Uncle Marcus had spent years researching the hotel's history. He'd found the missing art collection, or more accurately, he'd known where it had been hidden all along. You see value where others don't, his words echoed in my memory. He hadn't just been talking about the hotel's architecture. The next morning, I made 2 calls, one to a renowned art authenticator and one to my lawyer. Within hours, my quiet hotel became a hub of activity as experts carefully cataloged and verified each piece. Miss Lawson, the head authenticator, pulled me aside, his voice trembling with excitement. This is extraordinary. These pieces, they've been considered lost for nearly a century. Museums around the world have been searching for this collection. I nodded, thinking of Uncle Marcus's meticulous research. How much? How much is it all worth? He adjusted his glasses. Based on preliminary authentication, conservatively, over $400 million. The room spun. I gripped the dusty reception desk for support. Of course, news traveled fast. By evening, my phone was exploding with messages from family members who had mocked me just days before. Darling, Aunt Margaret's voice oozed through my voicemail. We simply must discuss this wonderful discovery. I always knew you had your uncle's clever instincts. William's text was less subtle. Let's talk business. You'll need help managing this kind of wealth. I have connections. Even my father called, his tone completely transformed from dismissive to proud. Sweetheart, this is incredible. But you'll need guidance. The family should be involved in decisions about the collection. I let them all go to voicemail. Instead, I sat in the hotel's library, surrounded by Uncle Marcus's research materials, finally understanding the full story. The art hadn't been stolen, it had been protected. The original hotel owner had hidden the collection from looters during the financial crisis of 1929, but died before he could retrieve it. The secret had died with him until Uncle Marcus, with his passion for history, had pieced it together. A week later, I called a family meeting. They all came, of course, the same people who had ridiculed my decision to keep a hotel. The lobby had been cleaned and sunlight now streamed through repaired windows, making the crystal chandelier sparkle once again. The collection has been authenticated, I announced to the eager faces, and I've made some decisions. Excellent, William stepped forward, straightening his tie. I've already drafted some proposals for managing the assets. I held up my hand. The entire collection is being donated to the National Gallery. What? The collective shock was almost comical. With one condition, I continued calmly. It will be permanently housed here, in a specially constructed museum wing of the Stonebrook Hotel. You can't do this, Aunt Margaret sputtered. That collection is worth hundreds of millions. It belongs to the public, I said firmly, and the hotel will be restored to its original purpose, a sanctuary for artists and creators. The museum will ensure its sustainability, and the Stonebrook Arts Foundation, which I'm establishing, will provide residencies for emerging artists. But the money, Diana stammered. We'll fund arts education for underprivileged children, I finished, just as Uncle Marcus would have wanted. They left in a fury of slammed doors and threats of legal action. But Uncle Marcus's will was ironclad, and the donation paperwork had already been filed. 1 year later, I stood in the transformed lobby of the Stonebrook Hotel and Museum. The grand opening gala was in full swing, with art enthusiasts, historians, and media from around the world in attendance. The hotel's rooms upstairs were fully booked with artists and residents, their creativity bringing new life to the historic halls. Children's art classes filled the renovated ballroom during the day, and the library had become a research center for art history scholars. Miss Lawson, a young artist, approached me, her eyes shining. "I can't thank you enough for the residency opportunity. This place, it's inspiring." I smiled, thinking of Uncle Marcus. Sometimes the greatest treasures aren't the ones you can sell, but the ones you can share. That evening, after the guests had gone, I made my way up to my private apartment on the top floor. The hotel's lights glowed warmly below, and in the distance I could see cars still lined up to visit the museum. On my desk sat a framed note, the last one Uncle Marcus had written to me, to Olivia, who always understood that true wealth isn't about what you keep, but what you create. The Stonebrook is yours now. Make it shine again. And shine it did, not with the glitter of sold artwork or the sparkle of millions in the bank, but with something far more valuable, the light of creativity, learning, and possibility. My family never understood why I gave away a fortune. But then again, they never understood why Uncle Marcus chose me for this legacy in the first place. Some treasures are worth more than money, a lesson the Stonebrook would continue to teach for generations to come.